Hello and welcome to Eavesdropping at the Movies. I'm Mike,
And I'm Jose.
and today we're joined by returning guest and friend of the podcast, Celia. Hello, Celia.
Hello.
Nice to have you with us from Canada. And you wanted to talk about Get Carter, which is having a 4K restoration right now, which is what Jose and I have been to see.
Yes.
And actually, we'd never seen it before, either of us.
Really?
Yeah,
Okay.
but you were dead into it. You wanted to talk about this. So what is it
Yes.
that you wanted to talk about?
Well, I guess I'll just sort of launch right in, but
Mm,
I did notice that a lot of the tenor of the advertising around the 4K restoration talks about it as British gangster classic and one of the greatest gangster films of all time, and I really wanted to make the case for it as a film noir.
It
And
is, yes.
yes, and there are a number of reasons that I want to do that, and a number of things about it that I think are really just brilliant, and I'm always really kind of struck by every time I watch it. Yeah, I don't know if you want me to just launch right in or
Launch right in.
yes.
Well, actually, before you launch right in,
Yeah.
I should repeat what I told Mike yesterday because
Yeah.
we were going into the cinema and we were talking about how I'd never seen it and whatever, and I thought, kind of, I wonder if this is one of those films that everybody says is such a great classic only because so many of the British films of that period were like so not good that
Right.
this just
Yeah.
rises above all the crap,
Mm.
or whether it's really good. And actually, I was
Mhm.
really surprised to find that I think it's really great as well.
Yes,
Kind of, it was
yeah.
a revelation to me.
Yeah.
So, but let's hear from you, Celia.
Yes. Well, so I think a lot of my enthusiasm for it comes from its sense of place, and I know that that's probably not that big of a revelation to anybody who's seen it, or any of the discussion around it probably always talks a lot about the fact that it's set in Newcastle and that it makes really excellent use of uh, Newcastle as a place, not just visually, but also kind of like as a state of mind, I guess we'd say. And I think the thing that really struck me this time is obviously like at the beginning of the film, Jack Carter, who is this enforcer or heavy man, he's like the violent part of the organized crime organization, has gone back up to Newcastle, where he's from, on the train to look into the causes of his brother's death. And as he's on the train, which is sort of like this opening sequence of the film, he's going up to Newcastle, sitting on the train, and you're sort of seeing the change in the landscape as he's going. He's sitting there on the train. He's reading "Farewell, My Lovely" of Raymond Chandler, which I
Yes.
think is sort of the biggest clue, I guess, that this isn't just sort of like your run of the mill Scarface or something like that. And when he reaches Newcastle, there's I always like to sort of think with noir that the terroir is really important. It's another character in the film usually, and so the thing that I really like with Newcastle is that it's not that it's Chandler's Los Angeles, but it's more that it's Hammett's San Francisco. And it sort of really tracks out because it's a hill, a city of hills and angles, and it sort of roots to
But
nowhere, and there's the docks and all of that sort of milieu to it, but it's been
yes,
transplanted to England, and it's just sort of like a successful reimagining or homage or whatever to all of these private eye novels and noirs and things that everybody really loved in Europe, and it's like another outgrowth of that love, and it's also very successfully parochial, and it's like this is that love in a British context, and I
yes.
really enjoy that about it.
I wanted to say that is the limit to the comparison with Hammett, right? Because what really comes across is the red brick, the smallness of the houses, how everything is worn and sad looking, and the pubs, the clothes that people are wearing, the boarding house. It all has like this, painted over too often, yeah, smell of cabbage aspect to it, right? And then the red, black brick that you see everywhere. The cold, yeah, everyone's always wearing an overcoat or a coat. So that's where you transition from one place to what you're calling the parochial, which actually is just really the local, but the local as a state of mind. Yeah, it's a very consistently used imagery, which is a kind of a disaffection, a kind of um, poverty, yeah, or kind of a kind of lack. Uh, uh, you notice, for example, how Carter is always careful to tip, to give money to, yeah. But here it's not just for a service provider; it's also you get the feeling to meet a need, yeah, that money will come in really handy, yeah. So I love that about it as well.
I always got the sense, or regularly got the sense, when he was getting out his wad of notes and handing a few out, that it was coming across to the locals. Well, I suppose he is a local, but he's a Londoner. Comes across as the big rich man from London coming up here with all his money, doling it out. Like from their perspective, I always felt it could be quite patronising. Sometimes it felt like it was. You know, like what are we, a charity?
They didn't have any problem accepting it. None of them turned him down. None of them hesitated.
Well, I didn't say they weren't hypocrites. But I think there is that feeling to it as well, from their side of the exchange.
Yeah, well, he's the rich gangster from London, for sure.
Mm.
Yeah, he's the successful gangster, and both the gangsterism and the success are underlined. He's got money, but everyone's scared of him. But also, what I wanted to emphasize is this aspect of need. Yeah, that Newcastle is poor, or the Newcastle he's traveling through, right, is one that's poor, and therefore you have the contrast, yeah, of the houses of the two I suppose villains. Yeah, the one who's very successful, who runs the penny arcade games, and then the character played by John Osborne, yeah, who's the gang leader who basically is responsible for his brother's death. Yeah,
Mm.
um, so I mean, even the places are underlined. Yeah, so one is like a house in the country with security and a private entrance, right? Old, yeah, but wealthy. The other one is kind of this. Well, he comes into his house and kicks his daughter's friends out because they're ruining the carpet, right? Yeah. So there is, the film also evokes the importance of things, of money, underlines class. Yeah. I think it's really wonderful, and that is also part of what helps create this milieu, this feeling, this state of mind, yeah, that kind of the film is so powerfully evokes, I think.
I think on the other hand as well, though, that the fact that he has the money and he's doling out the bills all the time, sort of serves to underline the fact that he's powerless in the face of unseen forces or whatever, because it does employ that classic noir device, and this is actually the most relevant thing to Farewell My Lovely, where um he's a patsy for both sides, and they're both trying to use him for their own purposes, unbeknownst to him, until sort of the final act, I guess. And
Mm.
he's like buffeted by these unseen forces of fate, and it doesn't really matter if you have if you have your pocket of bills and you can go around bribing people and stuff, because you're still prisoner of fortune in the end.
But also his focus is to find out what happened to his brother. Yeah, he comes in with a suspicion that it was foul play, so that is the primary thing on his mind. Yeah, it's kind of initially he doesn't even know there's a crime, he just suspects it. Yeah, it's at the funeral talking to his brother's girlfriend and the daughter, yeah, that kind of he begins to suspect that there's something else, and that becomes kind of you know the main thing. So this finding about his being a patsy and so on, it's almost like he becomes aware as we become aware. Yeah. Um, kind of, I think the film doesn't play with differentials of knowledge, yeah, between him and us.
I do think though, like in your classic Chandler, you have Marlowe coming in and he doesn't even know what the real story is until sort of
Mm.
right at the end, right? Especially in Farewell My Lovely, he's being used by everybody right the way through until he sort of wises up at the end. And
I don't know, Mike. What did you think? Because I didn't feel that as strongly, to be honest. Yeah, like you begin to sense that he might be a patsy when they begin to make a patsy of him. When the guy offers him £5,000,
Yeah.
to yeah. Until
Well,
then,
that's the first moment he notices and he objects and he says, "I'm not doing this for you. You think I'm going to take your word for it? You just want this guy off, and you think you can use me." So that's the moment where he becomes very explicitly aware that people are out to use him.
but that my argument is that that's also the moment where they're trying to turn him in, where they're trying to use him. I didn't get the feeling that they were using him before then.
Right? Yeah. Like I didn't think there was a kind of um, like an overarching plot that any of the higher up figures had to use him. They make use of him increasingly, or they try to in certain ways throughout the film, or as the film develops. But no, I didn't think it was a kind of. I mean, there's certainly no moment where it's like, oh, here's what was happening all along, and here's the big plan. You were a part of it. It's none. There's nothing like that. It's a film that develops much more organically and straightforwardly, I think.
I don't know that that a Chandler or like Farewell My Lovely in particular doesn't develop organically, because it starts out being an investigation about one thing. He's looking to find out what happened to the gangster Moose Malloy's girlfriend who's disappeared, and then um, by the end there are a lot of other things that have come in, and the story is really about something else.
Mm.
And I think um, and part of that is because of what Marlowe knows and doesn't know, and people who know things who aren't telling him things, and things like that. And I think that that's like quite a classic
Mm.
Chandler device for sure. And there's always this moment at the end where he's angry that he's been lied to all along, and or lies by omission as well.
Mm.
Where he's saying, "Why didn't you tell me what you knew when I came in here?" So
It's certainly the case that goes on in this, and as he learns more, he's angry that he wasn't being told this, and people were hiding things from him. But in terms of him being a part of their plan, and I think that is absent from this. That's not something I ever got the sense of. Like I say, like Jose said, for me it was just that one moment where the restaurateur fella offers him that money. That's the only moment I thought I got the sense that was in play, or he was in play in their game, sort of thing.
yeah,
The rest of the time, it's just him. It's a detective story. He's there uncovering the truth, and it takes him a long time because people are lying and hiding things. That's what I mean by kind of straightforward. Because I was still confused. I mean, it's a film where there's a lot of like Kevin said to Gary, and Gary said go over here and see Steve, and I was like, fucking hell, I can't keep up with all these fucking names. So there was that, but that's just like my confusion of actually saying that when I went and read the plot later, I was like, oh yeah, no, I did see all of those scenes, and it did make sense. um,
I meant to ask you, Celia, because I thought initially one of the reasons why you might have wanted to talk about this film in particular is because it really is so sexist.
yeah,
And I
that's
wondered.
true. Yes, it is. It is a
mm.
sexist film. I guess.
Well, there's no point in being a woman in this film if you're not at some point taking your clothes off or showing your legs off or something like that. Like
Yeah.
apart from the sort of older fat woman who's singing in the pub at one point, I think she's the only person, and even she is she's sexual with the guys.
Oh yes, and she gets into a cat fight with another
Yeah,
woman. So
exactly. But
Yeah.
she's the only one who's not kind of sexualized in the way that the others are, by showing off,
she's
by
quite
having her body
sexualized.
shown off.
Yeah.
Yeah, but in the way the others are. I mean,
It's funny. Yeah, I don't have a I can't really justify that. I guess it's just something that you think, oh well, it's part of the territory, gangster film noir. Obviously, there are no
mm.
there are no good women in a film noir. So I don't
Well,
know.
but she's no Mildred Pierce, right?
Yeah,
There's no Mildred Pierce in this film,
yeah,
so I mean, I don't want to make an issue of it
yeah,
because actually, it didn't bother me. I just thought that that might be one of the things that you talked about. It didn't bother me because I just saw it. It's a film of its time.
yeah,
It really is a film made by man, and you see it, right? Kind of. Women are there to be like fucked or exploited or sold or
Mm.
used, or displayed for male consumption. It's not what the film is about, right?
yeah,
So it takes on a different place, and it's very much kind of part of that milieu. It's seedy, you know. I mean, there's basically a rape of a minor,
yeah.
yeah. So it's very much part of what I think is, to me, the film's greatest success is creating that ambiance.
Absolutely, yeah.
There is both an ambiance in the film, and that is a structure of feeling in the film as a whole that it evokes, yeah, it conveys very
I
powerfully.
wonder if the reason it hasn't really bothered you or I either anyway is because that is part of the milieu. I mean, if you didn't have that, there would seem to be a lack of something, a lack of some kind of authenticity, right? Because I think that the film is, maybe the film itself is not sexist. It's just saying, here you are. This
Mm.
is it. This is the time. This is the place,
Mm.
and this is part of it.
Well,
Yeah.
those women all have roles. They're not just the eye candy and the being draped over the couch or whatever it is. They are that as well, and they are definitely titillating the audience with the way they're dressed and the way they're shot. But they all
I
have
think
roles, and they all
I
have
think
parts to
Britt
play as
Eklund
well.
has no other function in this film than to take her clothes off.
Apart from Britt Eklund, I forgot about her. Yeah, apparently in South Africa, her scene was completely cut out for censored, and but she was still on the poster, and people were like,
Mm,
"Why is she on the poster? She's not in this film."
mm.
But yeah, no, you're right. You're right
She
about
didn't
her.
want to do it,
Um,
I think, as well, or it was a bad career decision for her to do it. But
But
I
she's
think
only
there's
neither
some.
here nor there. But anyway,
I think I read that she said later that she had not regretted it in the long run, but I think that's maybe something that you say when the film is kind of reevaluated and gets a critical reappraisal. And it's not that it was badly critically received at the time, but over the years it's kind of been rediscovered and held up as this is a really great example of British cinema.
Mm.
And I get the feeling that like saying a few years down the line, actually this was a good role to play, is sort of based on that a little bit.
Yes, because I think basically my understanding is she was in financial trouble. They offered her a lot of money because she didn't want the role because it's 5 minutes long,
yeah,
and basically they offered her a lot of money to take her clothes off.
Mm.
It's Britt Eklund topless in the film. That's a selling point. Definitely in the period it was, and she's used that way.
Mm.
I mean, so let's draw the veil over that aspect.
Yeah, no, you're right. I forgot about her. But the other thing is, speaking about censorship, is I think part of the thing is that there had been a reduction in censorship in the UK not long before this film came out, right? And the way that this film was made and what was going into it was kind of a response to that, of what we can show now, what we can do now. I was reading, I read a little bit of Roger Ebert's review from the time, and he was talking about how British movies of this ilk are normally kind of cutesy, or they've got flashy camera tricks and things like that, and actually they don't have this sense of place, this sense of darkness, this sense of uh, understanding of class and that sort of thing. So it kind of felt like there was something new to that, maybe in cinema, in British cinema at least.
It's very harsh.
I think this is the other reason that I'm very enthused about it. Is that I think you had mentioned before, kind of like the red brick and the richness
Mm.
of the shadows and stuff, and it's a beautifully shot film. It's beautiful just to look
Yes.
at. It's so
Mm.
so gorgeous. The look of it is so I want to say like it's very art school, because I think
Mm.
it's very reminiscent of kind of like old master paintings. The richness and the depth and the grit and stuff in the colors and the shadows and the lighting and everything is just it's your real Caravaggio, especially sort of like things like the funeral or the wake or whatever, and they're in this
Mm.
dark little row house, and um, there's a lot of this play with different depths of field, and also like a very shallow depth of field and pulls of focus, and um, like canted angles,
Yes.
whether they're like canted high or low angles, but also natural canted angles with the play of the different hills. And there's like one of those wonderful shots where somebody is, I think, descending a hill, but the shot is overhead and it kind of is moving up, and it's like such a beautiful play with a lot of the conventions of noir as well, but removed to this new context of 1971 Newcastle. And actually, this is something that, so I've seen the 4K trailer, but I have not seen the 4K version of this film. And watching the trailer, I thought, oh, I don't want to stand against progress, but is this too clean now? This is like where's the grain and like the dirt and the all the things that really actually added an extra layer for me to it's like a dirty, gritty looking film. And so I'd be interested to hear from both of you whether you felt like
I thought the grain looked really, really clear. You could see all the grains. I didn't notice anything that I thought was off about the look. I thought it was really nicely restored, from what I could
It
tell.
looked fantastic. Yeah. And actually, one of the things about that Eastman color is that it fades, right? So to be able to see those blues and those reds,
the reds, for sure.
They're used very sparingly, right? But they are eye popping when they appear, and I think it complements kind of the look of the film really beautiful, because you have all the rich browns as well, and the dark. I mean, one of the things that interested me is I was quickly looking through the Wikipedia page, and it said that Hodges, had decided to film kind of everything from a distance, and I thought that's interesting, because what I remember most is the close-ups, and the editing of close-ups, right, and the richness of people's faces, and the makeup of the period, and also how you have people who are probably only 60 looking very, very old, with the jowls and the folds of the skin and the drinking in the pub, right? And how the film really does succeed in evoking another way of life, of evoking 1971, and kind of the economic context of that period, and that whole kind of working class milieu so vividly. And part of the reason, why it does so is actually through the use of light and color. That kind of, it's brown, and gray. And actually, when you see the sea at the end, just the color of the sea, you can feel the chill in your bones. It looks so cold, right? Because it's that steel blue, right? Yeah. So
I think that I like that too. The sort of secondary landscape that is everybody's skin, their bumpy, imperfect skin. That's very. I'm going to get in trouble probably for saying this, but that's very evocative to me of a certain, of Britain, I guess, right? It's like, it's not teeth, it's skin. Like, everybody's got unique skin, shall we say, and due to their lifestyle choices.
Yeah, well, they're unpolished.
So judgy. The lifestyle choices.
Well, I'm trying to not get in trouble. But
one of the things that I didn't realize is that this is I thought it was part of a Michael Caine season at the BFI, but it's not. It's part of a Mike Hodges season.
That is.
And I wondered if you have any views on Mike Hodges.
Yes, I have so many views on Mike Hodges. So many years ago now, about 10 years ago now, I had the pleasure of being able to see the director's cut of The Terminal Man, which is one of Mike Hodges' other films, and it's based on a Michael Crichton novel, I guess, and it's stupid. Like, the novel is really stupid, and it has George Segal stars as this guy has had some kind of brain implant too. Anyways, science fiction and kind of trippy. And it is it's like the most gorgeous film I think I have ever seen in my life. Like, I was talking to Mike about this the other day, but that there's like this triumvirate of British directors who came to Hollywood, and I think were quite responsible for the look of 70s Hollywood films, or a certain kind of 70s Hollywood films, with especially things like these close-ups, wonderful close-ups, and really stark compositions, and these sort of beautifully composed tableaus and stuff. And I think he is certainly one of them. And the other two were Peter Yates and John Boorman. So John Boorman with Point Blank, which is that wonderful Lee Marvin
It's
film.
great.
So
Fantastic.
Point Blank and Los Angeles, and there's these wonderful kind of just groupings of people in each frame, and like every frame a painting, literally. Like it's such a beautiful film to look at. And then Peter Yates, who obviously did direct Bullet, amongst other things. And I know people are very like, it has an iconic car chase, but if you go and watch the car chase, it's not just like, okay, by the end, yes, it is just some cars driving fast, but it's initially like the setup of it, which is the best part, in my opinion, is all these wonderful little things, little close-ups, little fragments of bits of cars, things about driving, whatever, and it's very slow, and it's a very slow setup and a slow burn, and like it's the only time where not the car chase, the pre-car chase is the best, is like what it is.
So Mike Hodges.
Yes, Mike Hodges. I'm sorry. Yeah, totally off topic. But I think that they all have this very pronounced visual style that's based in a kind of close up that I don't think you actually really see in cinema anymore. I do think that everything is now on sort of like a mid shot kind of murky level of like sort of boring realism, I guess, and shot, counter shot, whatever, like and here we're trying out all kinds of things where we don't have to cut, so pulls in focus, different angles and things like that. And I don't know their specific backgrounds, but it just feels to me like art school, but in a good way, in the best sense of that. And
the shots that Jose was referring to, when he was talking about Mike Hodges saying I shot everything from far away, and he said, well, that's weird because I always saw that it was all the close-ups. You know, they're not. I don't think they're mutually exclusive. I think they are close-ups shot from a long way away.
Yeah.
And that intense zoom in and long lens on these very tight close-ups of faces is, I think, maybe what you're referring to there, Celia. These kind of iconic close. That's what they look like to me. It's a close-up from a long way away. You're observing Jack Carter from all the way across the room, and then someone maybe passes in front of him, or it's slightly obscured, which emphasizes the fact that you are this far away. And there's a kind of, I don't want to say voyeuristic. I don't think that's quite the right word, but you're aware of how you're watching him. You're not there with him exactly, but you are an observer of him in this situation, wherever it is. I was really aware of that when it was when in the scene where he meets John Osborne's character for the first time. Or goes to see him, breaks into his house, whatever, and he's having that poker game, and there are these kind of two conversations happening at the same time, and they're overlapping. And actually, the close up there is really on John Osborne, and it gets gradually tighter and tighter and tighter in as this poker hand between him and this, I think Harry, the guy's name was, escalates and escalates, and they're raising and raising, and the intensifying close up. You get it's tighter and tighter and tighter on his face, and the threat in John Osborne and his character, I think, is absolutely wonderful. And then intercut with this conversation that is obviously important that Jack is having with the girl, I forget her name, that's happening on the side. And I thought that was a brilliant scene, actually. I really loved it. I loved the way it was mixed. I loved the way that basically nothing was happening, but so much was happening at the same time. And I thought it was fun. I haven't seen something like that in a long time. I thought that was a really terrifically paced scene, even though it ends up with essentially nothing having happened. It's just a poker game, it ends, and he leaves peacefully. I thought I love that scene.
Do you have any views on Michael Caine in the film? It's a star vehicle. It's a key film in his filmography. What are your thoughts?
So I think it's quite good because it doesn't actually call on him to do a lot of acting, as it were. He has to do sort of like a stone face, like implacable oncoming storm kind of
No, but then, I mean, yes,
yeah,
but then there's also that moment where, he sees what's happened to his niece.
yeah,
Yeah, or that moment where he, his thoughts on his brother are confirmed, and he's on the verge of tears, and I thought he was wonderful, and I don't like him. So I mean, for me, it really came across what a wonderful actor he is. Actually, I thought he gives like a really great
yeah,
performance, because as you say, it's impassive, but it's not impassive to everyone. There's an impassivity to the people around
yeah,
him, and a coolness and a control. But actually, then to the camera, there's this great revelation of feeling when he's alone. Yeah.
Mm.
So I thought that was wonderful. I thought he was wonderful in it. I thought, and actually, what struck me is, those scenes in the pub or when he's with other people, is the film underlines something that I hadn't quite noticed before, is that he's a really big man.
yeah,
Yeah, you know,
Mm.
he towers over everyone else,
yeah,
right? And then with that blonde coloring, yeah, I mean, he's like a walking target in a way, right?
yeah,
Like the height and the hair color make him a kind of a target, really. And the other thing that I observe, and it's just my thought, but I'd like to hear yours, is one of the things about stars is that sex appeal is often an important component,
yeah,
yeah, in their stardom. And if Michael Caine has any, I don't get it. Yeah, I don't think he's particularly handsome, though in some angles I suppose he is, and he's not sexy, and yet, you know, I think he's really great in this.
yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know. What are your thoughts?
Um, I think so. First of all, he has very blue eyes, which are played up quite well in the shooting of this film and in the close-ups and stuff. And yeah, I don't know that I can necessarily make the case for his sex appeal based on his very blue eyes, but um I think he has this sort of insolence about him in most of the roles
Mm,
of this period. I think that's quite
mm,
probably has a certain appeal to it. I don't know why I'm saying probably. It does have a certain appeal to it.
mm,
And yeah, I don't know that it's not necessarily he's not like Terrence Stamp or something where it's like, oh yeah,
mm.
but
Yes.
It's more his presence than his physical
perhaps,
kind of
yeah,
qualities. Like, because
yeah,
what appeals to me about his entire presence in the film is his focus.
hmm,
And as you were saying, Jose, it's all about what happened to his brother and nothing else. I say he sleeps with a woman here and there, but for the most part, with that aside, I think it's about getting information about his brother. That's why he's here, and that focus, I think, that, which I think maybe is what you see as that kind of face that doesn't really move. But I think it's he's in every scene he's got a really tight focus on who he's speaking to, the kind of information he wants to get out of them. Um, and that I think like that and that going along with the fact that he's like 9 foot and in control of every scene kind of physically. Um, I think gives you this incredible presence that he has in every single. He controls every moment that he's on screen,
yeah,
with those few exceptions of when he's, for instance, when he throws that tantrum when the guy offers him the 5 grand to kill the other fella. It's like he's not in control at that point, and he loses
Mm,
it. And when he cries because he's seen what's happened to his niece, he loses it. And ultimately, when he kills, I can't remember the character's name, but at the end, Eric, I think. I mean, he doesn't even shoot him. He loses control so much that he smashes his fucking head in with at the end of a
yeah,
shotgun. Like, that's an incredible loss of control. So apart from that, I think he's composed and he's focused and in control, and that I think is maybe what is appealing about him, and
mm.
could turn into sexual appeal. You know.
It's interesting because we haven't talked about the most iconic scene in the film, which is where he comes out of the house naked. Yeah. And actually, I think that scene is very relevant to this discussion, because, you know, he just exudes a kind of uh, self confidence that's
Mm.
not braggadocio, that's ordinary, right? So, he doesn't give the sense that, I've got the biggest dick in the neighborhood. Like, yeah, it's just like, get out of here, right? And I don't care if you see me naked. Yeah, like,
Mm.
there's a kind
Yeah.
of a low key uh, self confidence in himself. Yeah, that's without braggadocio. Yeah, that's kind of it's not look at me what a big man I am. It's just get out of here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I think something that's sort of interesting to me here is that Eric was played by Ian Hendry, who I guess at a certain point was quite a big star. Um, Ian Hendry had imagined, in that sort of embarrassing way of um, actors who are a little bit older or on the wane or whatever, that when they came to him with this project, that he was going to play Carter.
Mm.
And I think it's sort of interesting to think about that, uh, because it wouldn't really have worked, even though he does make actually some attempt to do a Newcastle accent. um,
I don't know. I mean, it would depend on how good he was, because think of how good Bob Hoskins is in something like Mona Lisa, or you
yeah,
know
Long Good Friday.
or The Long Good Friday, right?
Yeah, yeah,
So
absolutely.
I think he doesn't look like he would be good, but a lot would ride on the performance. Yeah.
Yeah, he's very good as Eric, though,
Mm.
is the
Yes, he
thing.
is.
So yeah, I'm not sure, but I think I always think about that's funny. It's sort of like, there's that really great anecdote about Ellen Terry where, I think maybe her nephew John Gielgud had brought her some script, and there was like an ingenue part in it, and he was imagining that she would play this grand dame type part that was also in it, and she was reading the script imagining that that was the part that they had in mind for her to play in this time.
Yes,
So I
because
just kind
there's
of
no
think about
way
that.
MGM would have cast, what's his name? This actor, I don't even know his name.
Ian Hendry, I think, he's like quite a big star because he was in Village of the Damned, and like in the 50s, I think he was like it.
Really?
So
Okay.
maybe they would have, right? Like, but at this point, he'd already sort of
Well, he was drinking as well, wasn't he? I think at this
blotted
point.
his copy book
Yeah.
by being an alcoholic. Yeah, so I think that's kind of um
And I think the story is he
the
also kind of resented Michael Caine, not just because he got this part that he imagined he would have, but because he was kind of a contemporary who was soaring. Because
yes,
Michael Caine was a star, but he'd done Alfie, he'd done Zoom, he'd done a couple of other things, done
yeah,
Ipcress File. So I mean, and the thing about Michael Caine taking on this role is that Jack Carter is, although he's understandable, he's basically a shit, and and that's like not,
yeah.
he's not a beautiful hero, he's an anti-hero at best, you know.
I think also it's probably a departure for him, for Michael Caine
Yeah.
as well. That type of role to be sort of a not that likable of a
Yeah,
figure.
exactly. That's what I'm saying. Like
Yeah.
that's
So
the important thing about the
yeah.
important thing about this role in his career. I think is
Hmm. Yeah.
it's doing this. I'm doing something different. I'm going to be a fucking shithead for a change.
Hmm.
I'm going to do some acting. Yeah.
Um. So, what do you think, Celia, has been its lasting influence? The films, or has it been influential at
This is a
all?
good question. I am sort of thinking of it as like a one off, I guess, usually when I'm thinking about it, but I guess that possibly it's sort of the progenitor of all these British gangster films, and sort of like this subgenre of um the British gangster. And although, like, if you think about it, I think a lot of those films, like Croupier or something, that's Mike Hodges. So um perhaps it's not.
There are definitely directors who see it as an influence. So if you look, I
Yeah,
mean, Guy Ritchie. I
yeah.
haven't heard Guy Ritchie say that, but I find it hard to imagine that he would make films the way he does if Get Carter hadn't been an influence on him.
Yeah,
Um,
but I think in a way, like, the thing that's sort of sad about it to me, I guess, is that it showed that there's all these possibilities in a place like Newcastle or whatever. You could make this wonderful
Yeah.
You could be in, what did you say, a crap house and do that. And that, I think, a lot of places that have their own kind of wonderfulness, and
Yeah.
you could be exploiting those places rather than saying, oh well, let's
set it in London again.
yeah, absolutely.
This is
And
what
that
they. Yeah.
Well, let's
yeah,
do Downton Abbey again.
yeah.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah,
because the thing
yeah,
is,
absolutely.
because one of the things that you, I think, I don't think we ever said it explicitly, but when you were bringing up the idea of the film as a film noir, I mean, the thing that immediately occurs to me is that it's about the seedy underbelly of society. It's a film that's very comfortable moving between porn films and gangsters and all this, and in a very authentic feeling way. And like I said, it does it, as you say, it does it in Newcastle. Like London isn't the only place in the country that's like that. There was a TV series maybe getting on for 20 years ago called Funland, which was by I think a couple of the other people from League of Gentlemen, which was a drama, and it was a kind of weird drama set in Blackpool. And again, it was kind of seedy underbelly stuff, and that was much more. That wasn't realistic at all. It was fucking weird and wacky, like League of Gentlemen. But still, it had that interest in trying to go to these places, kind of thematic places. But it didn't have to fucking just set it in London like everything else. It found somewhere in Blackpool to do it, and it found this weird way that only Blackpool knew, because Blackpool's all about the fun fair and the amusement arcades, and it's like exploited all of that for this
Yeah,
fucking creepy weird thing that wasn't like if it had been set in London, wouldn't have been like that at all. And that's, I think, the shame is that we don't get those. We basically we get it
yeah.
occasionally.
So that's like to not really answer Jose's question about its ongoing.
Yeah, yeah,
It's the
absolutely.
impact we wish that it had, but I think it doesn't necessarily have to be a seedy underbelly kind of thing either, right? Like you could have films with a very intense sense of place and setting that are not focused on that aspect of it.
It's something that I find peculiarly, well, it's very typical of almost all cultures, right? An overabundance of French films are set in Paris, an overabundance of Spanish films are set in Barcelona and Madrid. So,
Or the joke where it's like all Canadian films are set in New York.
yes, which makes sense. Um, it still feels a bit of a shortchange to the culture, because Britain is so small and so accessible. You can get to anywhere, in just a few hours.
But
So
also with that, like a few hours, and it's a totally different place. Like there's
yes.
such a
But what I mean
I
is
think
that even if the
yeah.
film industry is
Mm-hmm.
located in London, there's no
Yeah.
reason not to make films in Birmingham or Durham or, Dover or wherever, right? Each which has its own culture.
A very strong sense of who they are, where they
Yeah.
are. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So, anyway, any last thoughts, Mike?
Well, one thing I want to say, which I never got around to, is basically how ridiculously absorbing I found the film. There's so much of the film that is dialogue free, slow, shots of just Michael Caine walking, investigating his brother's room, all that kind of stuff. It takes a long time to do that, and it's absorbing every single second of that. I think it's beautifully kind of fundamental. Just putting the camera down and letting him act and go through his investigation or whatever it is that he's doing and seeing. I found it completely engrossing, and I think that's worth saying. That's all.
Celia, any last thoughts?
I am struck anew every time by how beautifully made it is as a film, and that there's sort of a craftsmanship to it that I think is um missing, maybe, or a little bit lost in the current offering of cinema. There's like we've lost a lot, I think, um in terms of how films are shot now. And to see a film like this really brings it home, I guess. That you think like, oh, it doesn't, films never look like this anymore, and what a shame.
All right. I thought it was really great. I mean, I went in with the thought that maybe this was just one of those films that only British film fans thought was a really great film, and I was corrected. I think it is truly a great film. and I'm very glad we saw it. So thank you very much for listening. We are eavesdropping at the movies, and we are on
Apple Podcasts, Audible, Google Podcasts, Spotify, SoundCloud, and YouTube. On social media, we're on Facebook and Twitter. And the website is eavesdroppingatthemovies.com.
Thank you very much, Celia Nichols. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.